The airport was buzzing that morning. People were rushing in every direction, the rolling sound of luggage wheels echoing on the shiny floor, flight announcements overlapping one after another. In the middle of all that noise, a young black woman stood near the check-in counter, holding her small brown suitcase tightly. She looked both nervous and excited. This trip meant everything to her. She had been saving for months to buy this ticket. It wasn't a vacation or a family visit. It was for a big job interview in another city, one that could finally help her build the life she had always dreamed of. For years, she had worked small jobs, sometimes juggling two at once just to keep her bills paid. She had always promised herself that when the right opportunity came, she would not let it slip away. Today was that day. She reached the security checkpoint, glancing at her watch again and again. She was running late because her bus had broken down halfway to the airport. By the time she got another ride, she was already sweating with anxiety. Her flight was scheduled to leave in less than 40 minutes. Every line looked endless, every delay felt like a mountain in her way. But she told herself to stay calm. She had come too far to lose her chance now. Once she passed security, she started to walk fast, almost running toward her gate. The airport was large and her gate was at the far end. As she walked, she could hear the announcement for boarding. Her heart sank. She picked up her pace, dragging her suitcase quickly. That was when she noticed an old man not too far ahead. He looked fragile, maybe in his late 70s. He was standing near the escalator, trying to balance his walking stick with one hand while holding a heavy-looking bag with the other. He looked confused and tired. People passed by him like he wasn't even there. Busy travelers rushing to their own gates, not wanting to get involved. The old man tried to lift his bag but failed. It almost slipped from his hand and hit the floor. The young woman slowed down. Her eyes moved from the old man to the direction of her gate. The boarding announcement played again. It was the final call. She could make it if she hurried right now. Her flight, her dream job, her months of hard work. It was all on the line. But then she looked back at the old man again. His hands were shaking and he was breathing heavily. No one had stopped to help him. Her heart tightened. She knew what she had to do. She took a deep breath and walked over to him. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked gently. The old man looked up, surprised that someone had even noticed him. "Oh dear, I'm fine. Just trying to get to my gate, but these steps, they're a bit tricky for me," he said with a weak smile. "Let me help you," she said without thinking twice. She took his bag, helped him steady his walking stick, and slowly guided him toward the elevator. It wasn't far, but his pace was slow. Every step took time. The airport was crowded and people brushed past them impatiently. The woman could feel her heart racing. She knew she was losing precious minutes, but she couldn't just leave him there. They finally reached the elevator. Inside, the old man tried to thank her, but she just smiled and said, "Don't worry about it, sir. We'll get you there." When they reached the right floor, she walked him all the way to his gate. He thanked her again and again, his voice shaking a little. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped," he said softly. "People these days are always in a hurry." She smiled, though her chest felt heavy with worry. "It's all right. I'm glad I could help." She glanced at the time. She had less than 5 minutes left before her own flight's departure. She turned to leave, waving goodbye to the old man, and began running as fast as she could toward her gate. Her suitcase bumped against her leg, her heart pounding with every step. The gate was still visible in the distance, and she could see the staff preparing to close the doors. "Wait, please wait," she shouted, waving her hand as she ran. But by the time she reached there, the attendant shook her head gently. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The gate is closed. The flight is ready for takeoff." The woman froze, her breath catching. "Please, I was here just a minute late," she pleaded. "I had to help someone who needed it." The attendant gave her a sympathetic look but said quietly, "I understand, but once the gate is closed, we can't reopen it." Her shoulders dropped. She stood there, staring out the window where the plane was already taxiing toward the runway. Everything she had worked for felt like it was slipping away right in front of her eyes. Her interview was early the next morning. If she didn't make it there tonight, she'd lose the chance completely. Her chest tightened. All the effort, all the saving, all the plans, gone. She walked to a nearby seat and sat down slowly, trying not to cry in public. Her hands were trembling. Around her, people moved as if nothing had happened. Some were laughing, others on their phones, a few sleeping near their gates. Life went on for everyone else, but for her, time had stopped. A few minutes later, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Young lady," the old man said softly. She turned around, surprised to see him again. He looked at her with concern. "You missed your flight because of me, didn't you?" She tried to smile. "It's okay, sir. I'll figure something out." He sat beside her slowly. "You didn't have to help me." "Most people wouldn't have," she shook her head. "Maybe, but I couldn't just walk away. You reminded me of my grandfather. He used to say that helping others never makes you poor." The old man smiled faintly, his eyes warm. "Your grandfather raised a good woman. Not many like you these days." She didn't say anything. Her throat was too tight to speak. The old man reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bottle of water. "Here, drink this. You look tired." She took it, thanking him quietly. They sat there in silence for a while. The old man finally said, "Sometimes we miss one flight to catch another one. Maybe one meant just for us." She gave a small laugh. "I hope you're right, sir. Because right now I feel like I've just lost the biggest chance of my life." The old man didn't argue. He just smiled kindly and said, "Good things often start from moments that seem bad. I've learned that the hard way." She looked at him, wondering what he meant, but he didn't say more. After a while, the old man asked about her trip. She told him everything, how she'd been saving up, how the job meant everything, and how she wasn't sure what to do now. He listened patiently, nodding as if he understood every feeling behind her words. When she finished, he said softly, "I believe people like you always find a way. You have the right heart." He thanked her again for helping him earlier and asked for her name. She told him, and he repeated it thoughtfully as if memorizing it. "I'll remember that," he said. "You've reminded me that kindness still exists." Then he stood up carefully, leaning on his walking stick. "Take care, my dear. Don't lose hope." She watched him walk away slowly, disappearing into the crowd. Something about his presence stayed with her even after he was gone. She didn't know why, but she felt calmer, even though she still didn't have a solution. Maybe it was the way he spoke, or maybe it was that gentle smile that made her believe that somehow things would work out. She spent the next hour trying to talk to the airline staff about rebooking her flight. Most of the flights for that night were full, but the representative said they could try to put her on standby for the next morning. It wasn't guaranteed, but it was better than nothing. She accepted and sat back down. As the night settled in, the airport grew quieter. She looked out the large glass window, watching planes take off one by one into the dark sky. Each time the engines roared, she imagined herself on one of them, moving closer to her dream. But deep down she also knew, if she had to go back in time and make the same choice again, she'd still stop to help that old man. That was just who she was. She closed her eyes, trying to rest for a bit, not knowing that the man she helped, the one who had almost missed his own flight, wasn't just an ordinary old traveler. He was someone whose life was far bigger than she could imagine, and her small act of kindness was about to change everything that came next. The morning sun was just peeking through the wide airport windows when she woke up. She had spent most of the night sitting on the same bench, using her small bag as a pillow. Her neck ached and her eyes felt heavy, but she didn't complain. She checked her phone, no missed calls, no messages. The airline's standby flight list was her only hope now. Her stomach growled softly. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. She stood up, stretched her arms, and walked toward a small cafe near the waiting area. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, mixed with the sound of clinking cups and soft morning chatter. She bought a small sandwich and a cup of tea, the cheapest option on the menu. As she sat down to eat, her thoughts wandered back to the old man from yesterday. She wondered if he had made it to his destination safely. He had seemed so kind, almost like someone out of a different time, grateful, gentle, with a way of speaking that made her feel seen. She smiled quietly to herself, remembering his words. Sometimes we miss one flight to catch another one. At the time, it had sounded like just a comforting phrase, but now it kept echoing in her mind. After breakfast, she walked back to the check-in counter, hoping the airline staff could give her some good news. The woman behind the desk recognized her immediately. "Oh, you're the passenger from last night, right?" she said kindly. "Good news. You've been confirmed for the next flight, and your seat has already been upgraded to business class." The young woman blinked in surprise. "Business class? She repeated, confused. There must be some mistake. I only had an economy ticket. The staff member smiled. It's no mistake, ma'am. Your booking was adjusted by someone from our management team this morning. Everything's already covered. She was speechless. But I didn't ask for any changes, she said softly. I know, the staff replied. It's all taken care of. You just need to relax and enjoy your flight. Still confused, she thanked the woman and walked away, holding her new boarding pass tightly. The idea that someone had gone out of their way to upgrade her felt unreal. She didn't know anyone from the airline, and she definitely hadn't requested any special service. Maybe it was luck. Maybe someone had canceled last minute. Either way, she felt grateful. While waiting near the gate, she pulled out her phone again, checking the time. A message from her potential employer flashed on the screen, reminding her of her interview schedule. She typed a polite reply explaining that she had missed her original flight, but would try her best to arrive before the afternoon. She didn't know if they'd understand, but she had to try. A few minutes later, boarding began. She stepped into the plane, still wondering how everything had changed overnight. The moment she entered, the flight attendant greeted her warmly. Welcome aboard, miss. Please follow me. There was something in their tone, a polite warmth that felt unusually personal. She followed them to her seat and froze for a moment when she saw it. It wasn't just business class, it was one of the best seats on the plane, right by the window with plenty of space. The attendant helped her settle in and offered her a drink. She thanked them, still unsure what to say. Everything felt different, too good to be true. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe this was life giving her a small reward after a hard night. As the plane took off, she looked outside the window, watching the clouds grow smaller beneath her. For the first time in hours, she smiled with relief. She whispered softly to herself. Maybe the old man was right. Maybe missing that flight wasn't the end. After a while, one of the attendants returned with a small envelope. This is for you, she said with a polite smile. The woman looked at her in confusion. For me, are you sure? Yes, ma'am. It was left with your ticket details, the attendant replied before walking away. She opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten note on thick, elegant paper. The writing was neat, old-fashioned, the kind people used before text messages became the norm. It said, "Thank you for your kindness. Not many people stop to help a stranger anymore. You reminded me that compassion still exists. Enjoy your flight. Consider this a small thank you." She stared at the note, her eyes wide. Her mind went back to the old man instantly. Could it be him? The same man she had helped yesterday? It had to be. But how would he know about her flight details? How could he possibly upgrade her ticket? She smiled faintly, touched by the thought. Maybe he had told one of the airline workers about what happened. Maybe he had friends here. Whatever the reason, the note made her heart feel light again. The exhaustion from the long night seemed to fade away. She carefully folded the note and placed it in her small purse, planning to keep it forever. During the flight, she couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. How a small act of kindness had somehow come back to her in such a surprising way. She watched the clouds outside, lost in her thoughts. Maybe there really was some truth in what the old man had said, that good deeds always find their way back. When the plane landed, she felt both nervous and hopeful. She still had a few hours before her interview. If she was quick, she could make it in time. As she got off the plane, a uniformed airline representative was waiting near the gate with a small sign that had her name written on it. She hesitated for a second before walking over. "Excuse me," she said. "That's my name." The man smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am. I've been asked to escort you to the airline's corporate office nearby. It won't take long." She blinked, confused again. "The corporate office? But why? Did something happen?" "I'm not sure, ma'am," the man said calmly. "But they specifically requested to meet you. It's just a short visit. Please don't worry." Her heart began to race. She didn't understand what was going on. Why would an airline want to meet her? Had there been a problem with her booking? Was this about the upgraded seat? She didn't have much choice, so she agreed to follow him. They walked through a private section of the airport, away from the crowded terminals. The air grew quieter, the floors shinier, the environment more formal. After a few minutes, they arrived at a large glass door with the airline's logo in silver letters. Inside, everything looked modern and expensive. White walls, big windows, and staff moving quietly with professional smiles. The man guided her to a small waiting area. "Please have a seat," "Someone will be with you shortly," he said before leaving. She sat down, clutching her purse nervously. Every minute felt longer than the last. Her thoughts spun wildly. Maybe they wanted to apologize for her missed flight. Maybe they felt responsible. But then again, why the corporate office? Why all this formality? She was still lost in thought when the door across the room opened. A middle-aged woman in a navy suit stepped out and smiled warmly. "Good morning. Please come in. Someone would like to meet you." The young woman stood up, trying to hide her nervousness. She followed the woman inside, her palms sweating slightly. The room she entered next was large and beautifully decorated, with soft lighting and tall windows overlooking the runway. And then, she froze. Sitting on a comfortable chair near the window was the same old man she had helped yesterday. But he didn't look like a helpless traveler now. He was wearing a neat suit, his posture straight, his expression calm but confident. He looked like a completely different person. He smiled when he saw her. There you are," he said kindly. "I was hoping you'd come." Her mouth fell open. You're the man from yesterday," she said softly. "Yes," he said with a gentle laugh, "and I'm glad you still recognize me." She stared at him, still processing what she was seeing. He looked healthier, younger even. "I don't understand," she said finally. "What is all this? Why am I here?" The old man leaned back slightly and said, "You helped me when you didn't have to. You missed your flight, your important plans, just to help a stranger. I wanted to thank you properly. People like you are rare." Her voice trembled slightly. "You didn't have to do any of this," she said. "I only did what I thought was right." He nodded. "Exactly. That's what makes you special." She didn't know it yet, but the conversation that was about to follow would change her life forever. The man in front of her wasn't just an old traveler. He was someone far more important. Someone whose world she had unknowingly stepped into with one small act of kindness. And as she stood there, confused yet humbled, she couldn't help but feel that this meeting wasn't an accident at all. It was fate slowly revealing itself. One quiet moment at a time, she stood there quietly, her heart beating fast, unsure of what to say next. The same old man she had helped at the airport was now sitting in front of her, looking nothing like the lost traveler from yesterday. He looked sharp and calm, his white hair neatly brushed, a gold watch on his wrist. His eyes had the same warmth, though, the same kind look that had caught her attention the first time. I don't understand," she said softly. "You look so different. Yesterday you could barely walk, and now you're here like—" He finished her sentence with a smile. "Like someone who doesn't need help?" He chuckled lightly. "Yes, I suppose that's true." She sat down slowly when he gestured to the chair in front of him. Her hands fidgeted on her lap as she tried to make sense of everything. The office was large and beautifully designed. The view from the window showed airplanes taking off one after another. The man's desk had a nameplate on it, but she couldn't quite read it from where she sat. He looked at her kindly. "First of all, thank you for helping me yesterday. You had no reason to stop, especially when you were in a hurry, but you did it anyway." She smiled nervously. "It was nothing, really. I just saw that you needed help." He nodded slowly. "That's what everyone says when they do something good. But I've traveled all over the world, and not many people take the time to notice someone in need." She lowered her eyes for a moment. "I just did what I thought was right." The old man leaned forward slightly. "And that's exactly why I wanted to see you again." There was a moment of silence. The young woman didn't know what he meant. She looked up and finally asked, "But how did you find me? And how did you know which flight I was on?" He smiled again, this time a little more knowingly. "That's a fair question. Let's just say I have ways of finding people who make an impression on me. The airline staff told me about your missed flight, and I made sure they arranged something special for you." Her eyes widened. "So, it was you who upgraded my ticket?" "Yes," he said simply. "Just a small way of saying thank you." She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "That was very kind of you. You didn't have to do that." He waved his hand lightly. "I wanted to. You reminded me of something important yesterday. That kindness still exists, even in busy airports full of strangers." He paused for a second and then added, "You see, I was once like you, rushing everywhere, chasing my next flight, my next deal, my next success, until one day I realized I had forgotten what truly mattered." She listened quietly, not wanting to interrupt. There was something honest and heavy in his voice. He continued, "I built something big in my life, something I'm proud of. But in the process, I lost touch with simple goodness, until you stopped to help me. That moment reminded me that real wealth isn't about money or power. It's about how we treat people. She smiled faintly. I'm glad I could remind you of that. But honestly, I was the one who got lucky. You made sure I didn't miss my next flight. He chuckled. That was easy for me to do. Something in the way he said that caught her attention. Easy for you? She repeated curiously. He looked amused. You still haven't figured it out, have you? She blinked. Figured out what? The man pointed gently toward the glass wall behind her. She turned her head and saw a large sign with the airline's name written in silver letters, the same one she had flown with earlier. Beneath it, there was a framed photo of the same man standing next to an airplane, shaking hands with business leaders and staff. Her eyes widened. She turned back to him slowly, her mouth slightly open. You're the owner? She whispered. He nodded with a small smile. Yes, I founded this airline almost 30 years ago. I still come to the airport sometimes without anyone knowing who I am. I like to see how people behave when they don't think anyone important is watching. For a long moment, she just stared at him, too stunned to speak. She had missed her flight because she had stopped to help a man she thought was a stranger, and that same man turned out to own the very airline she was flying with. He looked at her kindly. You see, yesterday I was testing something. Not a test in the usual sense, but more like observing how people treat one another. I'd been feeling disappointed lately. Too many people walk past when they see someone struggling. But then you came along. She couldn't stop the small laugh that escaped her lips. So I missed my flight because I helped a billionaire in disguise? He laughed too. Something like that. Though I must say I didn't expect you to miss your flight entirely. I was sure you'd leave once you helped me to the elevator. She shook her head. I couldn't just leave you there. You looked like you might fall. He nodded slowly, his eyes filled with respect. That's exactly what I mean. You helped without expecting anything in return, and that's something rare. He stood up from his chair and walked over to the window, looking out at the airplanes. Do you know what keeps this company running after all these years? He asked softly. It's not just good business decisions. It's people who care. People like you. She didn't know what to say. She just watched him quietly, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and disbelief. He turned around and said, Tell me, what do you do for a living? She hesitated. Right now I'm between jobs. I was actually on my way to an interview when I missed that flight. It was important to me. He nodded thoughtfully. And what kind of job was it? It was for an assistant position with a travel agency, she explained. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I've always wanted to work in the travel industry. Airlines, airports, that kind of world. He smiled slightly. That's interesting. You want to help people travel? She nodded. Yes, I like the idea of helping others get where they want to go. The man walked back to his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. She took it, unsure what it was. Inside was a neatly printed form and a card with the airline's logo. What is this? She asked quietly. It's a job application, he said, but not for a travel agency. For us. She looked up in shock. For your airline? He nodded. We're always looking for people who carry the right attitude. People who care more about doing what's right than what's easy. I think you'd fit perfectly in our community relations department. She stared at the papers in her hands, her throat tightening. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, he said with a warm smile. And consider it a delayed reward for the flight you missed. Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hold back. You really don't have to do this, she said softly. He smiled again. I know I don't, that's the point. Neither did you when you helped me. She looked down at the folder again, unable to believe how quickly her life had turned. Just a day ago, she had been a tired traveler, sitting in the airport feeling hopeless. And now, she was sitting across from the man who owned the airline, being offered a job she had never even dreamed of. He looked at her and said quietly, Sometimes when life closes one door, it's because there's another one waiting. One you can't see yet. You helped me open mine again. Now let me open one for you. She smiled through the tears that finally rolled down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. I won't let you down, he nodded. I know you won't. They talked for a little while longer about her background, her goals, and how she had always believed that small acts could change lives. When she finally stood up to leave, the old man walked her to the door himself. You have a good heart, he said. Never lose that. The world needs it more than ever. She thanked him once again and stepped out of the office, her heart still pounding. The hallway felt brighter, the air lighter. As she walked out of the building, she looked up at the sky where another plane was rising gracefully into the clouds. She smiled to herself and whispered, "Maybe that was the flight I was meant to catch." She didn't know what her new job would bring or how much her life was about to change, but one thing was clear. That single moment of kindness had set everything in motion. The missed flight wasn't a loss anymore. It was the beginning of something far greater. And somewhere in the quiet corner of the airport, the old man watched from his window, smiling to himself, grateful that fate had brought their paths together at just the right time. The next few weeks passed like a dream. Everything happened so fast that sometimes she had to stop and remind herself it was real. Just a month ago, she had been sitting in an airport, feeling hopeless and defeated after missing her flight. Now she walked into a tall glass building every morning, the headquarters of one of the biggest airlines in the country, wearing her new uniform and a quiet smile. The first day of her job was one she'd never forget. She arrived early, nervous but excited, clutching her small bag tightly. The woman at the reception recognized her name right away and greeted her warmly. "You're the one Mr. Henry personally recommended," she said with a knowing smile. "He doesn't do that very often." Her heart skipped a beat when she heard his name. She still couldn't believe that the old man she had helped at the airport was actually the founder of this huge company. Every time she thought about that day, her heart filled with warmth. It reminded her how unpredictable life could be, how one small act of kindness could turn a stranger into a blessing. Her new role was in the community relations department. It wasn't a high-paying or glamorous job, but it was meaningful. Her work involved listening to passengers' concerns, helping families who faced travel troubles, and making sure that the airline treated every customer with care and respect. It was the kind of job that suited her perfectly. She loved talking to people, comforting them, and solving their problems. Her supervisor, a kind middle-aged woman, took her under her wing.
"You've got a gift," she said one day after watching her help an upset passenger.
"You make people feel calm. That's not something you can teach, and it comes from inside." Every evening, when her shift ended, she would take a moment to stand by the large window in the office lobby, watching planes take off into the orange sky. It always reminded her of her missed flight, the one that started it all. Each plane felt like a reminder that life had a strange but beautiful way of leading people to where they were meant to be. A few weeks into her job, she received a message from Mr. Henry's office. He wanted to meet her. Her heart started racing as soon as she read it. She quickly fixed her hair, straightened her blazer, and made her way to the top floor. When she entered his office, the same warm smile greeted her. "Ah, there you are," he said kindly. "How's our newest employee doing?" She smiled nervously. "I'm still learning, sir, but I'm doing my best." He chuckled. "That's all anyone can ask for. Sit down, please." She sat, still unsure why he had called her. He leaned back in his chair and said, "I've been hearing good things about you. The staff tells me you handle people with patience and grace. You even managed to calm down a passenger who was shouting about a lost bag last week." She laughed shyly. "Yes, he was very upset. I just listened to him and tried to understand. Sometimes people don't want a solution first. They just want someone to care." He nodded approvingly. "That's exactly right. And that's what this company needs. More people who care." She looked around his office again. It was filled with old photographs of airplanes, pilots, and happy passengers. "You must be proud," she said softly. "You built something that helps so many people." He smiled. "I am proud, yes. But you know, it wasn't easy. There were times when I almost gave up. There were failures, disappointments, and even betrayal. But I kept going because I believed that the airline wasn't just about planes, and it was about people." She listened carefully, her heart full of respect. There was something inspiring about hearing him talk, not as a rich businessman, but as a man who had fought his way through life. He continued, "That's why your kindness stood out to me. You reminded me of the person I used to be when I first started this company, someone who cared deeply about others." She felt her throat tighten a little. "You've already done so much for me, sir. I still can't believe all this happened because I helped you that day." He smiled gently. "That's the beauty of life. The smallest actions often have the biggest results. You didn't help me expecting anything, but here you are, changing lives every day." They talked for a while longer. Before she left, he said, I have one more thing for you. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small envelope. It's not a gift, it's an opportunity. There's a special training program we're offering to employees who show potential for leadership. It's intense, but I think you'd do well in it. Her eyes widened. Me, but I've only been here a few weeks. He nodded. Sometimes time doesn't matter, effort does. Think about it. She left his office with her heart racing. She couldn't stop smiling the entire day. She decided that night she would apply for the program. She wanted to learn, grow, and make him proud. Not just because he had helped her, but because he believed in her when no one else did. Over the next few months, she worked harder than ever. She attended every training session, stayed late to finish her reports, and volunteered for every task no one else wanted to do. Slowly, her confidence grew. The same girl who had once felt invisible was now being recognized by her team and supervisors. One evening, while she was working late, she saw Mr. Henry walking through the office. He was checking on the night staff, greeting everyone by name. When he reached her desk, he smiled. "Still here, I see," she laughed lightly. "Just finishing up, sir. I like to make sure everything is ready for tomorrow." He nodded. "That's good. That kind of dedication will take you far." He sat beside her for a moment, looking out the window at the city lights. "You know," he said quietly, "I started this company with just 2 planes and a small team. People thought I was crazy, but I believed in doing things differently. I believed in people, even when others didn't. That's why I'll always support those who remind me of that belief." She turned to him, her voice soft. "You've helped me more than you know. I'll never forget that," he smiled. "Then just pass it on someday. Help someone else who needs it. That's how kindness keeps moving." Those words stayed with her long after he left that night. Weeks turned into months, and soon, her name began to be mentioned in meetings. Her supervisors praised her calm nature and leadership. She wasn't the loudest or most confident, but she had something that couldn't be taught: sincerity. And people noticed it. One afternoon, as she was walking down the hallway, a colleague stopped her and said, "You're becoming a bit of a favorite around here. Mr. Henry keeps mentioning you in meetings. Whatever you did to impress him, keep doing it." She smiled but stayed humble. "I just try to do my job." But deep down she knew it wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about proving that kindness and hard work could truly change a person's life. She wanted to be an example, to show others that success doesn't always come from connections or luck, but sometimes from doing the right thing when no one's watching. One day, Mr. Henry called her to his office again. This time, his assistant told her it was for something special. She walked in, nervous as always, but he greeted her with that same calm smile. "Congratulations," he said, handing her a letter. "You've been promoted," her eyes widened. "Promoted? To what?" "To team coordinator," he said proudly. "You'll be managing a small group of people in customer care. You've earned it." She stared at the letter, unable to speak for a few seconds. Tears filled her eyes and she smiled. "Thank you, sir." "Thank you so much," he smiled kindly. "You did this, not me. I just gave you a chance. You turned it into something real." She left the office with tears still in her eyes, but also with a heart full of hope. She knew this was only the beginning of something bigger. She had found not just a job, but a purpose, a way to give back, to help others the same way he had helped her. That evening, she stood again by the big window overlooking the runway. A plane was just taking off, its lights glowing against the dark sky. She whispered softly, "Maybe this was the flight I was meant to catch all along." And far above, in the quiet office on the top floor, Mr. Henry looked out from his window, smiling as he watched the same plane rise into the clouds. He knew he had made the right choice, not just in giving her a job, but in reminding himself that kindness, even in the smallest moments, could still change the world. Months passed, and life slowly settled into a calm rhythm. The woman who once stood hopeless in an airport was now someone people looked up to. Every morning when she walked into the office, her coworkers greeted her warmly. Her quiet smile, the same one that had once hidden her worries, now carried confidence and peace. She had found her place, not by chance, but through kindness and hard work. Her promotion had given her new responsibilities. She was now in charge of a small team that handled passengers' issues. Some days were easy, but most were filled with endless calls, tired travelers, and unexpected problems. Still, she never complained. She remembered her own days of struggle and tried to treat every passenger with patience, no matter how stressed they were. Her team admired her. They often said, You never raise your voice no matter how rude someone gets. She would just smile and say, if they're angry, there's a reason. Our job is to make their day a little better, not worse. Those words became her way of working, calm, kind, and steady. One rainy morning as she walked into the office, she noticed the atmosphere was tense. A flight had been delayed because of weather issues and passengers were upset. Her team was trying their best to calm people down, but one young trainee looked particularly nervous. He was new, barely a few weeks into the job, and a passenger was shouting at him, demanding an explanation. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the trainee's shoulder. "It's okay," she said softly, then turned to the passenger. "Sir, I understand this is frustrating. The weather has delayed several flights, but we're working hard to get you rebooked as soon as possible." Her calm tone worked like magic. The passenger sighed, still upset but no longer shouting. "I just need to get home," he said quietly. "And you will," she promised with a small smile. "I'll make sure of it." The trainee looked at her gratefully after the man left. "I thought he was going to report me," he said nervously. She laughed lightly. "Don't worry. You did fine. Just remember, listen first, speak after. Most people just want to be heard." It was the same lesson she had learned long ago when she was the one being helped, when Mr. Henry had taken the time to listen to her story. That evening, after everyone had gone home, she sat by the large window again watching planes take off. She thought about how far she had come. From the girl who missed her flight to the woman who now helped others catch theirs. It felt like life had come full circle. A few days later, she got a call from Mr. Henry's assistant. "He'd like to see you this afternoon," the assistant said politely. When she entered his office, he looked as calm and gentle as ever, though a little older and slower now. "It's good to see you," he said warmly. "You've been doing wonderful work," she smiled. "I'm just trying my best, sir. You taught me that small efforts matter." He nodded, looking pleased. "Do you remember the day we met? At the airport?" She laughed softly. "How could I forget? I was late, you had a heavy bag, and somehow that moment changed everything." He chuckled. "Yes, life is strange like that. Sometimes the smallest moments are the most important." He leaned back in his chair and said thoughtfully, "I wanted to tell you something. I'm planning to step down from my position soon. I'll still be around, but I want new people to lead this company, people who understand what it means to care." Her heart sank for a moment. "The airline won't be the same without you." He smiled kindly. "That's the beauty of growth. Things change, but the values remain, and people like you will make sure they do." She looked at him, realizing how much he had believed in her since the beginning. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "for everything. You didn't just give me a job. You gave me a purpose," he nodded slowly. "And you've honored that purpose well. I'm proud of you." After that meeting, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She walked out of his office knowing that what she had built there wasn't just a career. It was a reflection of his trust and her own hard work. Months later, she was walking through the airport for a routine check. She often visited to observe how staff handled passengers. That day, as she moved through the crowd, she noticed a young woman sitting alone on a bench, tears streaming down her face. Her suitcase lay open beside her and papers were scattered everywhere. Something about her sadness reminded her of herself. That day, she had missed her flight. Sitting in despair with no idea what to do next. She walked over gently and said, "Are you all right, dear?"